black belts harass a disabled woman in a wheelchair, unaware she's a retired Delta Force commander. She never expected a quiet morning at the city dojo to turn into a moment that would shatter assumptions and reveal a hidden legacy. When a group of arrogant black belts began mocking and harassing the woman in the wheelchair, they had no idea who they were challenging. Rebecca St. James wasn't just any disabled woman. She was a retired Delta Force commander, a warrior who had survived battles most could only imagine. The scars beneath her sleeves and the calm in her eyes told stories they couldn't see. What started as ridicule quickly became a reckoning. In moments, the dojo fell silent, witnessing a display of skill and quiet strength that would change everything and force those who doubted her to face the truth. Just a quick little pause before I forget. If you like this kind of stories of overcoming adversity and justice, please leave a like and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you're new here, consider subscribing to our channel so you don't miss tomorrow's special video. I guarantee you won't want to miss it. Now let's jump back in. The double doors of Ironwood Dojo groaned open as sunlight spilled across the polished mats. Conversation halted, not out of respect, but confusion. Wheels clicked softly against the hardwood floor as a woman in a dark hoodie and weather-worn jeans entered, pushing herself with steady, deliberate movements. Her legs didn't move. Her spine sat straight, but her gaze was lowered beneath the hood. "Can I help you?" came the voice from behind the front desk. It was laced with skepticism. The woman stopped in front of the sign-in sheet. She didn't answer at first. Her eyes flicked toward the open mats. A group of black belts were sparring, loud, aggressive, theatrical. One of them, a man in his early 30s with a shaved head and an ego twice the size, caught sight of her and scoffed. "Sorry, ma'am," he called out, half laughing. "Spectators sit over there." A couple of his friends snickered. The front desk clerk looked unsure whether to intervene. The woman's hands rested quietly on the wheels of her chair. Still no reply. She reached into her worn canvas bag. Not for a phone, not for keys, but a pair of fingerless leather gloves. Old, perfectly fitted, and unmistakably used. "You looking for someone?" asked another of the black belts, a lean, tattooed man named Kai Donovan, dressed in a custom GI with his name embroidered in red. He sauntered closer, eyeing the woman's wheels like they were some kind of joke. "Because this is advanced sparring. We don't do therapy rounds here." A few chuckles bubbled up again, not cruel yet, but dismissive, assuming. The woman raised her head. Just enough. Eyes like weathered steel locked with Kai's for half a second, then drifted away again, uninterested. It wasn't defiance. It wasn't fear. It was indifference. Pure, chilling indifference. Kai blinked, thrown off by something he couldn't name. "Right," he muttered. "Well, you're in the wrong place." But she didn't move. No one noticed the small patch sewn into the side of her bag, black fabric, faded gold stitching, barely visible. A single triangle, wings unfurled. "Delta." "Ma'am." The receptionist tried again, softer this time. "Do you need assistance getting somewhere?" The woman didn't answer. Instead, she rolled forward, smooth, controlled, toward the far wall where a row of framed certificates and black and white photos hung above the equipment rack. Her presence shifted the energy in the room. The sparring slowed. Whispers began. Kai folded his arms, smirking as if trying to reclaim the moment. "Look, I'm not trying to be rude," he said loudly, "for everyone's benefit. But we've got a full house and actual fighters in training. There's a rec center downtown with adaptive stuff. This isn't that." Another black belt, Liam Torres, early 20s, wiry, cocky, chimed in from the ring. "Unless she's here to teach us how to do wheelies. I could use that for my entrance." Laughter. Uneasy this time. The woman halted near the equipment bench. She stared at a photo on the wall. Master Ryuzo Yamada, the founder of Ironwood Dojo, flanked by soldiers in camouflage, decades ago. Her fingers brushed the frame with startling gentleness. "You know her?" A whisper came from the back of the class. "Nah, just another lost vet with stories." Kai stepped closer, his tone growing pointed. "I said you're in the wrong place. Don't make me repeat myself." The woman turned, slowly. She looked up at him, her expression unreadable beneath the low hood. Her face was pale, weather-worn. No makeup. A faint scar traced along her jawline, the kind surgeons don't usually fix. Still, she didn't answer. Didn't rise to the insult. Didn't move. She just existed there, like a carved stone, immune to wind and waves. Kai waved her off with a scoff and turned back to his students. Let's go. Ignore it. But as they resumed their match, something shifted. One student, Marissa Bell, 19, psychology major, white belt, lingered near the entrance, watching the woman with furrowed brows. Her instinct, raw and untrained, picked up what the others missed. The posture, the hands, the stillness wasn't weakness. It was containment. And just before the scene could settle, the woman reached down slowly and locked the brakes on her chair. Click. A deliberate sound, like chambering a round. No one noticed how quiet the dojo had gotten. The sparring resumed, but it lacked something now: rhythm, conviction, focus. It was as if the presence of the silent woman had seeped into the room, filling the gaps between every sound with something heavier. Pressure. She remained where she was, near the wall, gloved hands resting lightly on the wheels, hood still drawn low. Not watching the match. Listening. Measuring. Every shout, every stomp of a GI-clad foot, every arrogant breath. Kai landed a throw and strutted a half-circle around his opponent. That's how you keep center line, he barked, locking eyes with the woman again, clearly baiting her. Can't teach that from a chair. No response. Just that stillness. That exhausting, unshakable calm. Marissa, still hovering near the door, tilted her head. She wasn't sure why it bothered her so much. The woman hadn't said a single word, but it was the way she took up space without asking for it. The kind of space that made people uncomfortable for reasons they couldn't articulate. Her gloves were worn leather, but not gym-worn. No, they had the kind of use that came from utility. Her fingers were calloused. Her wrists bore the faint discoloration of old bruises. And when she adjusted in the chair, the motion was too exact, too trained. There was a control there that didn't come from necessity. It came from discipline, lived experience. Kai flopped down on the bench, wiping sweat with his towel. Seriously, if you're gonna just sit there, at least tell us your name. Unless Wheelchair Ninja is what you go by now. Still no reaction. Then, as if answering only the air, she finally spoke. Soft, flat, precise. Rebecca. The name dropped like a coin into a dry well. No last name. No explanation. Just that. She didn't look at him when she said it. Didn't look at anyone. Just kept her gaze fixed on the photo of Master Yamada, her gloved fingers resting beneath the bottom edge of the frame. There was a plaque below it, too old to draw attention anymore. Marissa squinted and leaned in to read it, then froze. Because beneath the photo, in tiny brass print, Yamada Tactical Excellence Award, 2006. Delta Detachment. Captain Rebecca St. James. Marissa's heart skipped. Rebecca St. James. The name hovered in her mind like a phantom. She couldn't place it, but something about it echoed faintly from a story, a lecture, maybe a podcast. Her fingers itched to pull out her phone and search, but instinct told her not to. Not yet. This moment needed watching, not explaining. Back on the mats, Kai tossed his towel aside and started shadowboxing in the mirror, his bravado growing louder again as the room's tension thinned. I swear, he muttered. Someone wheels in here thinking they're Batman every other week. Rebecca didn't respond. Her hands, now resting on her lap, were still. Her right sleeve was pulled slightly above the wrist, just enough to reveal a glimpse of ink. Not decorative, tactical. A black inked unit identifier barely visible above the glove's edge. Something old, precise, faded from sun and age. And then the scar. It curved like a crescent across the side of her neck, disappearing beneath the hoodie. A story left unspoken, carved into skin instead. Marissa stepped closer, just a few feet. She didn't say anything, just observed. There was an aura around this woman. Not mystical, lived in, as if she'd seen more in 1 week than this dojo would experience in a lifetime. Rebecca, Marissa asked gently, were you military? A pause. Rebecca didn't turn, but something softened in her jaw, a near imperceptible twitch of muscle. Once, she said quietly. Not a boast. A confession. Kai overheard and chuckled. Here we go? Let me guess. Top secret agent? Special forces? Karate with the president. He laughed at his own joke, but no one else joined. Rebecca didn't move. Didn't answer. But Marissa did. She's in that photo, she said, pointing toward the framed image. With Master Yamada. Look. Kai frowned and stood, brushing past her to examine it. He squinted, then scoffed. Could be anyone. But even he sounded less sure now. Another student, Andre Kim, 27, quiet brown belt with an interest in military history, stepped closer behind him. No, wait. I think she's right. That's Captain Rebecca St. James. Delta Force. I've heard that name. He turned to look at the woman in the chair. She hadn't moved, but the room had. Every breath was suddenly measured. The dojo was warm, but the temperature felt like it had dropped 5 degrees. Marissa stepped back, her face pale. Andre kept staring at the photo, then at Rebecca. Back and forth. The resemblance was undeniable now. The same sharp jaw, the same eyes, only younger then. The woman in the photo was wearing fatigues and a grin of iron. The woman before them now wore a hoodie and silence. Kai looked visibly unsettled but doubled down. That doesn't mean anything, he muttered. Lots of vets come through. Doesn't mean she's anything. But his voice lacked the weight it had before, and others had started to notice too. At the far end of the mats, Coach Elena Vega, the assistant instructor, early 40s, ex-police, paused mid-combo with her students. Her eyes had been tracking Rebecca since she entered, quietly. She took a slow breath. That's not just anything. Kai, she murmured, more to herself than anyone else. If that's who I think it is. Rebecca didn't acknowledge the conversation. Instead, she unlocked the brakes on her chair and wheeled over to the equipment cubbies. Her movements were calm, silent, deliberate. She reached in and pulled out an old training mitt, dusty and used. She turned it once in her hands, then rested it on her lap. Her fingers tapped it lightly. A rhythm. Left, left, right. Pausing. Then again. Left, left, right. Andre watched, brow furrowed. That's a drill, he whispered. CQB tempo. Close quarters. She's marking entry timing. Marissa turned to him. You sure? He nodded. They drilled that in Delta. It's muscle memory. Not something you do unless it's embedded. Kai watched from the middle of the mat, jaw tight, unsure whether to continue acting superior or back away. His stance was shifting, but he didn't want to lose face, especially not in front of his crew. She still hasn't shown anything, he said, more to himself now. Maybe she was once someone. Doesn't mean she's got anything left. At the front desk, the clerk quietly reached into the drawer and pulled out a guest waiver form, hands shaking slightly. He didn't say anything, just placed it where she could see it. Rebecca wheeled up, picked up the pen, signed in silence, R. St. James. And beneath it, for affiliation, she wrote only one word. Retired. The pen clicked softly against the counter as Rebecca set it down. She didn't look at the desk clerk or say anything, just wheeled herself back toward the edge of the mat, stopping right at the border where it gave way to the red padding. Her gloved hands rested in her lap again. Waiting. Kai paced slowly, the swagger still visible but now colored with hesitation. He could feel something crawling under his skin, something he couldn't name. He'd made fun of countless students before, beginners, tough guys, braggarts. But this one was different. Not because of what she'd said, but because of what she hadn't. She was a void, a black hole of reaction. And in a room built on performance and posture, that kind of silence was unsettling. Coach Elena stepped forward, arms crossed, voice low. Kai, she said, enough. He looked back at her. What? She's not your joke. He frowned. She hasn't said anything. Exactly. That landed harder than it should have. Meanwhile, Marissa stood near the entrance, watching Rebecca like a hawk. She wasn't scared of her. She was in awe. There was something about her composure, the way her body never wasted a movement. No twitch. No anxious fidgeting. Just breath. Control. Intent. The room buzzed quietly with background noise, but in Rebecca's vicinity, there was a pocket of calm, not peaceful, but dangerous. Like the stillness before a lightning strike. Andre stepped toward Elena. You were a cop, right? 15 years. You recognize that tattoo? Elena nodded once. Not from the academy. She's the real thing. I know. Kai caught the glance between them. Okay, he muttered, raising his hands. So she was someone. Great. Doesn't mean she belongs on the mats now. Rebecca shifted slightly. Her right glove pulled tight around the wrist. A single motion, efficient. Then, for the first time, she spoke with clarity. If I don't belong, she said, voice low and level, you won't have any trouble proving it. That landed. Hard. Marissa covered her mouth. Even Kai blinked. Elena raised her eyebrows. The dojo fell silent. Rebecca rolled forward one more inch, stopping on the edge of the mat. Her eyes scanned the floor, then the room, then Kai. The message was clear. Your move. Rebecca's wheels brushed the mat edge once again, and the silence that followed was oppressive. Not the kind that demanded attention, the kind that dared it. Kai exhaled sharply, rubbing the back of his neck. So what? You want to spar? His voice cracked just enough to betray something underneath, not fear. Uncertainty. Rebecca didn't reply. Didn't need to. She reached into the side pocket of her canvas bag and pulled out a pair of wrist wraps, aged and faded. The kind issued only through certain units. Not sold, not public. Her movements were surgical as she wound them around her forearms. Not fast, not flashy, just precise. Marissa leaned to Andre. Those wraps, you see the red stitching? He nodded slowly. Yeah, Delta Group 5. Operators called it the blood thread. Internal use only. The pieces were stacking too fast now. Coach Elena squinted at the way Rebecca tightened her final knot with her teeth. Just like the field manuals taught. Just like combat medics did under pressure. But none of it explained the wheelchair. That was the real question. What had happened to put her here? As if reading the room's thoughts, Rebecca paused. Her eyes drifted to the high windows above the mats, catching the light for the first time. And for a heartbeat, her gaze left the dojo. She wasn't here anymore. 4 years ago, Kandahar province. The noise was unbearable. Shouts, gunfire, the earth shaking from above as dust swallowed the air. Rebecca crouched beside the overturned Humvee, blood soaking her side, her rifle tucked tight against her chest. One of her team lay beside her, barely breathing. She pressed a bandage into his chest and whispered, "You're not dying today, Darren. You hear me?" A flash of mortar, the roar of metal, then blackness. Her eyes returned to the mat. Marissa had seen that look before, in documentaries, survivor interviews, her trauma psych lectures. Dissociation, but not weakness. Rebecca blinked once, as if locking something away, and then she flexed her hands. Alive again, present, whole, even if the chair said otherwise. Kai scoffed from across the mat. Fine. You want a round? You'll get one. Just don't cry when I knock you over. Rebecca turned her chair slightly, aligning herself with the center of the mat. No expression, no boast, no fear. She simply said, 3 steps. Then strike. Kai blinked. What? You get 3 steps. Use them. Kai laughed. It wasn't a joyful laugh, more like a defense mechanism. A sound meant to convince the room that he was still in control. But it rang hollow. 3 steps? You think this is some action movie? Rebecca didn't answer. Instead, she positioned herself with perfect alignment to the center of the mat. Wheels locked, body slightly forward, hands loose. It wasn't an athlete's posture. It was a combat stance. Kai rolled his shoulders. All right then, Captain Chair, he said with a smirk. Let's see what you've got. Coach Elena took a step forward, but stopped herself. Her instincts were conflicted. She didn't want to allow it, but something told her not to interfere. Rebecca's stillness was suddenly louder than Kai's voice. Flashback. Germany, rehab facility, 3 years ago. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Rebecca sat in a hospital-issued wheelchair, back rigid, right hand clenched. A therapist knelt beside her, holding a foam ball. You lost motor function in both legs. But your spine's intact. The chair isn't a prison, Rebecca. It's a tool. She didn't look at him. She just stared out the window. Behind her, on the table, lay a folded American flag. Unopened. Untouched. The therapist sighed. You've done enough. You don't have to fight anymore. Rebecca had whispered, almost inaudibly. Fighting is the easy part. Back in the dojo, the light shifted as a cloud passed overhead. Shadows danced across the mat. Kai took 1 step. Rebecca's left glove twitched. Marissa noticed it first, barely emotion, but loaded with meaning. Her breath caught in her throat. 2nd step. Kai began to shift his weight. Andre leaned closer. He's going to try a feint, left lead. He always does when he's nervous. 3rd step. Rebecca inhaled, just once, and exhaled slowly, like a sniper behind glass. Kai lunged. Fast. But in that frozen half-second, Rebecca's hands moved not up, but out. Her chair tilted forward, not out of loss of control, but by design. Her body angled, palm rising diagonally like a draw stroke. Kai's punch sailed through empty air. And in a blink, Rebecca's wrist caught his arm, redirected it, and brought it down. Controlled. Precise. Unavoidable. He stumbled, wide-eyed, breath gone. He hadn't even touched her, and she hadn't left the chair. Kai stumbled 2 steps back, staring at his own arm like it had betrayed him. The dojo remained frozen. No one clapped. No one laughed. No one even breathed. Rebecca didn't follow up. She didn't need to. Her hand dropped back to her lap, her posture once again perfectly still, as though the whole motion had been nothing more than a whisper in the air. You cheated, Kai said weakly, but his voice cracked, and the lie sat heavy between them. No, Andre muttered under his breath. She countered you 3 moves ahead. Coach Elena's brow furrowed, eyes narrowed on Rebecca now, like she was finally seeing her in focus. That wasn't sport, she said softly. That was tactical redirection. She could have dropped him harder, chose not to. Rebecca looked at no one, but inside, she was somewhere else again. Flashback, nightfall, Afghanistan. 7 years ago. It was raining. Mud and stone turned to tar beneath her boots. Rebecca crouched beside the compound wall, waiting for the signal. Her team had already breached. All that was left for her was Overwatch, until she heard Darren's voice in her earpiece. Rook, they've got civvies. Hostile. Armed. I need options. Her response was instant. Hold your shot. Collapse flank. Use the corner shadow. Copy Rook. You sure? Every room has an edge. Make them walk into yours. The fire never came. That night, not a single innocent died. Back in the dojo, Kai rubbed his shoulder, unwilling to meet anyone's gaze. Rebecca's hands dropped slowly from the rims of her wheels. She didn't speak, but something had changed in her presence. It wasn't just calm now. It was earned gravity. Authority, unspoken and undeniable. Marissa stepped forward, heart pounding. She looked at Rebecca, then back to the framed photo. The plaque. The name. Captain Rebecca St. James. Her breath caught. She really is her, she whispered. Andre nodded slowly. She's not just Delta. She was lead CQB strategist. Joint Task 42. I've read the field reports. She disappeared after Kandahar. Kai's face went pale. I didn't know, he mumbled. Rebecca finally looked at him. Not with anger. With clarity. You never asked. Kai paced backward toward the bench, jaw tight, shoulders still tingling. It wasn't pain that rattled him. It was humiliation. He could feel the room pulling away from him, eyes shifting, gravity realigning around the woman in the chair. I wasn't ready, he muttered. That wasn't a real fight. Rebecca didn't argue, didn't blink, didn't give him the relief of an excuse. You said 3 steps, she said quietly. You took them. Her voice was even, not cruel, but it held the tone of someone who'd spoken through bulletproof glass. Someone who'd given commands while blood filled their ears. Kai clenched his fists. Fine, he snapped. 1 more round. No rules this time. Coach Elena stepped forward. That's enough. But Kai ignored her. If you're gonna walk in here and pretend you're better than us. I didn't pretend anything, Rebecca interrupted softly. Her words cut sharper than a shout. You just assumed. Kai flinched. That was the first time her voice had carried weight. Not just gravity, authority. And it changed the air in the room. The lights seemed brighter. The silence more absolute. She turned her wheels slightly, facing him full on now. If we continue, she said, calm and unblinking, it ends with you apologizing. Kai scoffed. If I lose, sure. No. She leaned forward slightly. When we're done, you will apologize. The statement wasn't a challenge. It was a promise. Coach Elena stepped between them now. Rebecca, you sure about this? Rebecca glanced up at her. I've fought in worse places. Elena paused. Something in that answer froze her. She stepped back. Kai dropped into stance, bouncing lightly, his ego trying to catch up with his instinct. All right then, Commander, he growled. Let's go. Rebecca rolled to the center of the mat, locking her brakes with a single click. She reached into her hoodie pocket and pulled out a strip of faded cloth. Black and gray, torn, a remnant of an old Delta unit patch. She tied it around her wrist. Marissa leaned in. She's not doing this for pride. Andre nodded. She's doing it for discipline. The whole room gathered now. Students, instructors, bystanders. No one speaking. No phones out. The air was thick. Anticipation coiled like a loaded spring. Rebecca sat quietly, waiting. The dojo seemed to hold its breath, the air thick with anticipation. It was as if the very walls themselves sensed the significance of the moment unfolding within. Rebecca sat upright in her wheelchair, every muscle taut, but controlled beneath her dark hoodie. The faded delta patch tied around her wrist caught the sunlight streaming in through the tall windows, casting faint shadows on the polished floor. That patch wasn't just fabric. It was a testament to years spent in the shadows, missions whispered about, but never spoken aloud in places like this dojo. Kai bounced lightly on the balls of his feet, his face a mask of bravado, but the tightness around his jaw betrayed the storm brewing beneath. This was no ordinary sparring session. He could feel the weight of the silent room pressing down on him, the expectant eyes of every student and instructor watching, waiting for the moment the facade would crack. Coach Elena moved deliberately around the pair, her eyes sharp and unblinking. A veteran of 15 years herself, she understood what was at stake. Not just a contest of skill, but a clash of respect, pride, and the quiet dignity that comes from battles fought in places few would ever see. Her gaze flickered between Rebecca's composed presence and Kai's restless energy, silently weighing the outcome. The students formed a wide semicircle around the mat, faces drawn and quiet. Whispers had long since stopped. The room had surrendered to a respectful hush. Marissa, clutching her notebook tightly, watched Rebecca with wide eyes, barely daring to breathe. Every small movement, every subtle shift in posture, spoke volumes more than words ever could. Rebecca methodically rolled her chair a few inches forward, positioning herself with surgical precision in the center of the mat. Her gloved hands rested lightly on the wheels, ready. The only sound in the room was the faint scrape of rubber against wood and the distant hum of the city beyond the dojo's walls. Kai glanced down at his gloves, adjusting them nervously. He forced a smile, a weak attempt to mask his uncertainty, but it faltered under Rebecca's unwavering gaze. There was no room for arrogance here. Not now. Seconds stretched on, each heartbeat echoing louder than the last. Time seemed to slow, the entire space suspended in a fragile balance. Then, just as the tension peaked, Rebecca's posture shifted imperceptibly. Muscles coiled beneath her sleeves like a spring ready to release. Marissa caught the subtle glint of steel beneath Rebecca's chair, a combat knife, secured and unused, a silent reminder of the fierce history behind this quiet figure. Coach Elena's breath caught in her throat. Rebecca's lips parted barely enough to whisper the single word that shattered the silence. Begin. Kai exhaled sharply, stepped forward, and the storm, long anticipated, was finally unleashed. The dojo seemed to hold its breath, every sound fading into a background hum as the moment between calm and action stretched on. Rebecca's eyes remained locked on Kai's, steady and unyielding, reflecting a lifetime of honed focus and discipline. Even in the quiet stillness, there was a power in her presence that filled the room. Not loud, not flashy, but resolute and undeniable. Kai's breath caught in his throat, his usual cocky grin replaced by something much less certain. The arrogance that had buoyed him through countless matches now seemed fragile. His weight shifted carefully from one foot to the other, his hands rising slowly in a defensive stance, wary and measured. Every muscle in his body was tense, aware that this wasn't an ordinary sparring session. It was something far more profound. Around them, the dojo's students and instructors watched in complete silence, the anticipation palpable. Marissa's heart pounded as she clutched her notebook tightly, trying to capture every detail. Her mind raced to make sense of the subtle tension threading through the air, the weight of history and respect pressing down on the moment like an invisible force. Rebecca's gloved hands rested lightly on the rims of her wheelchair, fingers poised to maneuver with precise control. The faint ticking of her wristwatch was almost audible, a steady metronome counting down the seconds before movement. Her breathing was calm, measured, the breath of someone who has weathered storms far worse than this. Coach Elena's gaze sharpened, her lips barely parting as she whispered under her breath, "Stay sharp." Years of experience told her this moment demanded total focus and respect. Kai attempted a feint to the left, a quick shift designed to provoke a reaction. But Rebecca's gaze didn't flicker. Instead, her wheelchair shifted almost imperceptibly forward, her weight perfectly balanced, prepared to counter with surgical precision. The room seemed to contract, drawing all attention to the two figures at its center. A battle not just of skill, but of spirit. No distractions, no noise, just two warriors poised in the delicate space between stillness and motion. Rebecca's voice broke the silence again, soft yet firm. Focus. The word was more command than suggestion, carrying the weight of command experience and quiet authority. Kai's eyes darted momentarily to the black and gray patch tied around her wrist, the remnant of a Delta unit, then back to her unwavering face. Recognition flickered briefly in his eyes before he masked it, forcing himself to hold his ground. The air thickened, tension coiling tightly, as if the entire room awaited the inevitable. And then, in a sudden burst, like a taut bowstring released, the battle began. Kai launched forward with a quick jab aimed to unsettle, but Rebecca's response was a study in precision and control. Her wheelchair pivoted with a grace that defied expectation, the rubber tires gripping the polished wooden floor as she swept her forearm in a smooth arc. The movement was subtle but effective, redirecting Kai's momentum without excessive force. The impact wasn't loud or flashy, no dramatic theatrics, just a measured, surgical deflection that left him momentarily off balance. A few gasps rippled through the crowd. Marissa's eyes widened, her pen hovering over her notebook as she tried to capture every detail. This was far from a simple sparring match. It was a display of tactical mastery. Every motion, every breath, seemed deliberate, calculated with decades of experience lurking just beneath the surface. Kai quickly reset, brow furrowed, his strikes sharper but laced with hesitation. Doubt had crept into his mind, undermining the confidence he'd worn like armor before. His attempts to overwhelm her were met with poised counters, each timed with impeccable precision. Rebecca anticipated his every move, countering not with brute force, but with fluid, economical responses honed by years in the field. Coach Elena's eyes narrowed as she watched from the sidelines, leaning closer to Andre. "She's controlling the tempo," she whispered, like a seasoned operator who knows exactly when to strike and when to wait. Andre nodded slowly. "This isn't just a fight. It's a lesson in discipline, patience, and control." Rebecca's scars, faint but unmistakable, along with the faded tattoos peeking from beneath her gloves and sleeves, seemed to pulse with silent stories of sacrifice, loss, and resilience. She sat steady and composed, her wheelchair no longer a symbol of limitation, but of unwavering strength and mastery. Kai's frustration grew with each blocked strike, his breath coming harder, his movements less fluid. The bravado that had once defined him was replaced by grudging respect and a flicker of fear. The dojo was no longer a place for casual sparring. It had become a classroom of discipline where the true nature of strength was on display. This was not a battle won by force alone. It was a contest of presence, control, and mastery, qualities forged in the crucible of real war and hardship. And in that moment, everyone in the dojo realized Rebecca was no ordinary opponent. She was a force shaped by history, courage, and an unbreakable spirit. The rhythm of the fight slowed, the air thick with tension as every movement became a careful calculation. Kai's strikes, once bold and confident, now carried a cautious edge. His breath grew ragged, sweat dotting his forehead as the weight of realization pressed down on him. This wasn't a typical sparring partner. This was someone forged in the fires of real combat, whose every motion was carved from years of experience, discipline, and survival. Rebecca's eyes locked onto his, unwavering and calm, radiating a cold precision that left no room for doubt. There was no anger, no need for showmanship. Only the quiet authority of someone who has faced far greater challenges and emerged stronger. Each movement she made was purposeful, a lesson in control and restraint, executed with the grace of a master. Marissa's gaze was fixed, captivated by the subtle adjustments Rebecca made. With a slight shift of her shoulders and a careful angle of her chair, Rebecca optimized her balance and leverage. The faint light caught the scars beneath her sleeve, silent witnesses to battles fought long ago, battles that shaped her into the formidable presence before them now. Coach Elena whispered, her voice low and tense, "She's about to end it." Kai's eyes flickered with desperation as he searched for an opening, any crack in Rebecca's defense to exploit. But every feint, every jab he attempted was anticipated and neutralized with fluid, efficient counters. Rebecca moved with surgical precision, each strike designed not just to defend, but to dismantle his resolve. The dojo's atmosphere was electric, the crowd holding their breath, witnessing the quiet dismantling of arrogance by undeniable skill. The once boastful Kai faltered under the weight of Rebecca's mastery, his confidence eroding with each exchange. Then, with a steady breath and the perfect moment seized, Rebecca struck. Her movement was swift, controlled, and devastating in its simplicity. A perfectly timed counter that left Kai staggering backward, breath caught in his throat, eyes wide with shock. The room remained silent, the tension snapping like a taut wire. In that charged quiet, the undeniable truth settled over everyone present. This was no ordinary fight, no mere demonstration of technique. It was a testament to resilience, to years of sacrifice, and to the unyielding spirit of a warrior who had fought battles far beyond the dojo's walls. Kai's defiance crumbled as he faced the gravity of his defeat, and the crowd finally exhaled, a collective release that spoke volumes more than applause ever could. The dojo remained frozen, the air thick with a stunned silence that seemed to stretch endlessly. Kai stood rooted to the spot, his chest rising and falling in shallow, uneven breaths. His wide eyes remained locked on Rebecca's calm and unwavering gaze, struggling to reconcile the fierce combatant before him with the quiet woman who had entered the room earlier. The shock of his defeat seeped deep, unraveling the arrogance he had clung to moments before. The truth was undeniable. He had been bested by someone far beyond ordinary. From the edge of the crowd, a soft, trembling voice broke the silence. "That's Rebecca St. James." Marissa's words, barely more than a whisper, spread like wildfire through the room. A ripple of recognition passed through the students and instructors alike. Faces that had moments ago harbored doubt and skepticism now reflected awe and reverence. Rebecca St. James. The name was legendary, a retired Delta Force commander known for her tactical genius and unyielding resilience. Her disappearance years ago after a harrowing mission in Kandahar had become the stuff of whispered conversations and myths. Many had wondered what had become of the woman whose leadership had saved countless lives and changed the course of operations. The faded black and gray patch tied around Rebecca's wrists suddenly took on new meaning. The subtle scars hidden beneath her sleeves were no longer mere marks, but badges of honor and sacrifice. Her presence commanded respect, a silent testimony to battles fought far beyond the walls of this dojo. Coach Elena stepped forward, her voice low and resolute. "She's the real deal. What you've just seen, that was proof." Kai's face paled, the humiliation of defeat now mingling with awe and regret. His lips parted, struggling to find words as the weight of his mistake settled heavily upon him. I didn't know," he admitted, voice barely steady. Rebecca's reply was quiet, but carried an undeniable power. "You didn't ask." The crowd shifted, the atmosphere transforming from one of tension and judgment into one of respect and understanding. The woman in the wheelchair was no longer an object of mockery or dismissal. She was a symbol of quiet strength and unwavering dignity. In that moment, the lesson was clear and profound. True strength does not demand attention through noise or aggression. It commands it through presence, skill, and an unspoken history. Rebecca remained still, her eyes scanning the room not with pride, but with the solemn grace of someone who carries a heavy legacy and still stands tall. The room remained steeped in a heavy, reverent silence long after Kai finally slumped onto a nearby bench, his body betraying the emotional and physical weight of what had just unfolded. His chest heaved with ragged breaths as he struggled to comprehend the depth of the defeat, not just in skill, but in humility. The arrogance that had once buoyed him had been stripped away, replaced by quiet awe and an unmistakable respect for the woman in the wheelchair before him. Rebecca's posture softened subtly as the tension that had wrapped her like armor began to release. Her hands rested gently on the rims of her chair, no longer prepared to strike, but steady and composed, an anchor amid the storm. She carried not just the quiet dignity of a veteran, but the invisible scars of battles few would ever understand. Each breath she took seemed measured, a slow exhale of the burdens she bore silently. Marissa, still standing near the edge of the dojo's circle, felt her throat tighten. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, unbidden and raw. She glanced down at her notebook, now abandoned, as the true magnitude of the morning settled deep inside her. This was more than a story about martial arts or competition. It was a profound lesson in resilience, honor, and the quiet strength of those who have fought unseen wars. Coach Elena stepped forward with measured steps, her eyes meeting Rebecca's with a solemn nod of respect. "Thank you," she said softly, "for showing us what strength really means." Rebecca gave a faint, weary smile, one touched with both humility and unyielding resolve. "Strength isn't always loud," she said quietly. "Sometimes it's simply surviving." Kai's voice finally broke through the silence, low, tentative, but sincere. "I owe you an apology." Rebecca's eyes met his directly, steady and unflinching. "Then make it count," she replied. Around them, the crowd began to stir, conversations resuming but forever changed. The atmosphere had shifted irrevocably, ignorance and mockery replaced by respect and understanding. The woman once dismissed and underestimated had reclaimed her dignity, not through force or vengeance, but through presence, precision, and a legacy carried quietly in every scar and every measured breath. On that morning, in that dojo, the unspoken truth was laid bare. True strength is silent. It demands no applause. It commands respect. The dojo remained suspended in a quiet reverence, the shock of the revelation settling into the minds and hearts of everyone present. It was Marissa, still clutching her notebook, who finally broke the silence, her voice soft yet filled with awe. "That's Rebecca St. James, the Delta Force commander from Kandahar, isn't she?" Heads around the room nodded slowly, eyes wide with disbelief and respect. The name had long been spoken only in hushed tones within military circles, a ghost story of valor, sacrifice, and unyielding dedication. She was the woman who had vanished from public view after a mission that had marked the end of an era for those who knew her name. Older students and instructors exchanged glances, memories flickering through their minds. The articles they'd read years ago, the faded photographs of a fierce and focused leader whose presence commanded both fear and admiration. For many, it was difficult to believe that the quiet woman in the wheelchair before them was the very same legend. Andre stepped forward, voice steady and sure. Her tactics saved lives that no one else could reach. As the lead CQB specialist in Joint Task Force 42, she operated in shadows most would never survive. The world knows little of her, but those who served with her remember everything. Kai lowered his gaze, swallowing hard. The weight of his ignorance pressed on him like a physical burden. "I had no idea," he admitted quietly, the arrogance stripped away to reveal a humbling vulnerability. Rebecca's gaze softened for a moment, though the steely resolve beneath remained unbroken. "Most never do. I've spent years living between the cracks, carrying burdens that don't show on the surface." Coach Elena approached Kai, placing a firm hand on his shoulder. "You made a grave mistake today," she said softly, "but now you know the truth. And that changes everything." The atmosphere in the dojo shifted palpably, the previous tension melting into profound respect. The woman they had dismissed and underestimated had just revealed a legacy carved in blood, discipline, and sacrifice, a legacy that demanded honor and recognition. Kai stepped forward, head bowed in genuine contrition. "I'm sorry, for the disrespect and for the ignorance." Rebecca's reply was quiet but resolute. "Respect is earned, and it's never too late to learn." The dojo seemed to breathe anew, transformed by the lesson imparted, not just about skill or combat, but about humility, history, and the quiet strength that endures long after the fighting stops. The heavy silence that had filled the dojo moments ago gradually softened, replaced by a warm, reverent energy. The air seemed to shift, carrying the weight of lessons learned and respect earned. Kai, once brash and dismissive, now moved with slow, measured steps, his posture humbled as he approached Rebecca. His eyes, once full of arrogance, now reflected a new understanding. "I owe you more than just an apology," Kai began, voice low and steady, but filled with genuine remorse. "I owe you respect for your service, your sacrifices, and the strength you carry every day." Rebecca met his gaze with quiet dignity. The many unspoken battles she had fought over the years were evident in the calmness that underlined her words. Words are important, Kai, she said softly. But actions matter more. Kai nodded solemnly. The bravado he once wore like armor stripped away, revealing a man humbled and transformed. I was blind to what true strength really looks like. Coach Elena, standing nearby, smiled gently and said, "Sometimes it takes a moment like this to truly open our eyes. Strength isn't about flash or noise. It's about endurance and character." Marissa, who had been silently watching, stepped forward. Her voice trembled slightly, but carried a firm resolve. "Your story, your legacy, it needs to be shared. People should know what real courage means." Rebecca's expression softened, touched by the sincerity around her. A rare flicker of warmth passed through her eyes. "Perhaps one day. But for now, I choose silence, not out of shame, but out of respect for the cost that such stories carry." The students and instructors began to disperse slowly, but the newfound reverence lingered like a gentle, protective cloak over the dojo. One by one, students approached Rebecca with nods, quiet words of gratitude, and signs of respect. Kai stayed nearby, no longer an adversary but a humbled student, absorbing the gravity of the moment. In that shared stillness, the true lesson became clear. Strength is not always loud or demanding. It doesn't seek the spotlight. Instead, it earns respect through quiet resilience, unwavering dignity, and the presence of someone who has lived through hardships few can imagine. And in that dojo, on that morning, respect was reclaimed, not through force, but through understanding. The dojo's usual rhythm had quietly resumed, but beneath the surface, everything had changed. The room, once filled with tension and misunderstanding, now pulsed with a deep, collective respect. Rebecca sat calmly in her wheelchair, the morning's storm behind her, replaced by a serene stillness that felt both profound and healing. Kai approached with slow, deliberate steps, his face etched with sincerity and newfound humility. The arrogance that had once shielded him had been stripped away, leaving a man transformed by the weight of truth and honor. He stopped just a few feet from Rebecca, his voice steady yet soft. "Rebecca," he said, "you've shown us what true strength really means. Not just skill or power, but the quiet courage to carry your past, and all its burdens, with grace." Rebecca's eyes met his, deep pools reflecting a lifetime of hardship, resilience, and sacrifice. She smiled faintly, a gesture filled with the weight of experience. "Dignity," she replied quietly, "isn't something the world hands you. It's something you reclaim, day after day, moment by moment, through the choices you make. Not through loud declarations, but through quiet persistence." Around them, the dojo's students and instructors exchanged glances, their faces softened by the morning's lesson. Many had come with assumptions and biases, only to be humbled and enlightened. There was a new resolve in their eyes, a commitment to see beyond surface judgments, to seek the deeper stories that shape each person's strength. Coach Elena stepped forward, her voice calm but filled with respect. "What we witnessed today was more than a fight. It was a restoration of honor, an unveiling of the true meaning of strength and dignity." Rebecca's hands rested lightly on the rims of her wheelchair, steady and calm as ever. The scars and faded tattoos beneath her sleeves told stories no one spoke aloud, but her presence spoke volumes. "I don't need recognition," she said softly, "nor do I seek it. But I hope that anyone facing battles unseen, challenges unknown, remembers this. Strength is not loud. It's silent, it's persistent, and it is real." The sunlight streamed through the dojo's tall windows, casting long shadows and warm golden light across the floor. The interplay of light and shadow mirrored the day's events, a balance of quiet power and revelation, of struggle and dignity reclaimed. In that moment, the dojo was more than a training ground. It had become a sanctuary where the unspoken truths of endurance and courage were honored. Kai looked around, his voice breaking the silence once more. "I've learned a lesson today that I won't forget. Respect is earned not through bluster or bravado, but through integrity and the courage to stand strong, no matter the odds." Rebecca nodded, a rare softness touching her features. "Then carry that lesson forward. And remember, dignity isn't just about how others see you, but how you hold yourself, even when no one is watching." As the students began to quietly leave, their steps lighter, their minds clearer, a profound transformation lingered in the air. The story of a disabled woman in a wheelchair had shifted from one of mockery to one of quiet triumph, and the legacy of a warrior long hidden had been reclaimed, not through violence or spectacle, but through presence, grace, and an unbreakable spirit. 3 months had passed since that unforgettable morning, a morning that had forever changed the dojo, its students, and those who witnessed the quiet reclaiming of dignity. The space felt different now, alive with a new spirit and respect that had been carefully nurtured in the aftermath of revelation. The sun poured through the tall windows, casting warm pools of light onto the polished wooden floor as students gathered for the day's training. At the center of the room was Rebecca St. James, no longer the silent figure at the edge, but the calm, authoritative leader they had come to respect deeply. Her wheelchair moved effortlessly and with purpose, gliding across the floor with the same grace and precision she had shown months before. Each movement she demonstrated was exact and measured, a testament to years of experience distilled into mastery. Kai stood among the students, no longer an adversary but a humbled learner, his eyes sharp and attentive. His journey from mocker to disciple had been profound, reflecting the transformation that had swept through the dojo. Every lesson he absorbed was tinged with the understanding that strength was not about dominance, but about resilience, discipline, and quiet presence. Coach Elena observed from the sidelines, her pride unmistakable. "She's changed everything here," Elena said softly to a fellow instructor. "Not with force or bravado, but by living her truth, by showing what true strength really means." Rebecca's voice, steady and commanding, filled the room. True strength is silent. It doesn't shout for attention or demand recognition. Instead, it earns respect through consistent action, integrity, and the courage to stand firm even when unseen. Her words resonated deeply with the students, who practiced with renewed purpose, their motions reflecting more than just physical technique. They embodied a legacy of honor, quiet courage, and unyielding dignity. Between lessons, a few students approached Rebecca with questions, not just about moves or tactics, but about life, perseverance, and the weight of invisible battles. She answered with the humility of someone who understood pain and sacrifice but chose grace over bitterness. Outside, the world continued its rush, but inside the dojo, time seemed to slow, a sanctuary where respect replaced judgment, and understanding grew where ignorance once thrived. The story of a disabled woman, once dismissed and underestimated, had become a beacon, a symbol of what it meant to reclaim one's legacy not through spectacle or violence, but through presence, precision, and unwavering dignity. Kai, now a quietly confident student, glanced over at Rebecca, gratitude clear in his eyes. "Thank you," he said softly, "for everything you've taught us." Rebecca smiled, a rare but genuine warmth touching her features. "Remember, strength isn't measured by how loudly you fight, but by how steadfastly you carry yourself when no one is watching." As the sun rose higher, casting long shadows that stretched across the dojo floor like promises fulfilled, the legacy of Rebecca St. James endured, not as a legend in distant memory, but as a living, breathing testament to resilience and honor. And in that light, the dojo, and everyone who stepped inside it, was forever changed. Thank you for following this story. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and share your thoughts below. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. Stay tuned for more immersive tactical stories.